Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
I woke up later than usual that Sunday morning, realizing that Lucy and I had agreed to go to church. It had become an occasional tradition, partly to please our parents, but also as an opportunity to step away from everyday stresses and reflect on life. The sermon that day happened to address the idea of stepping into someone else's shoes before making judgments. While most people took it metaphorically, my gaze drifted to Lucy's high heels, and I wondered what it might literally feel like to slip on those shoes, to experience her life, even just for a bit. Once the service ended and we had gone through the customary small talk with our parents and a few acquaintances, Lucy and I decided to wander toward a nearby pub for some lunch. Our conversation meandered from our families to how the old church building seemed to be quietly falling apart, then onto the sermon again. Lucy kept insisting that understanding another person's life on a real, tangible level would cut down on the tendency to criticize. I half joked that she was welcome to borrow my flat shoes anytime. She teased me back, saying I wouldn't dare attempt wearing her heels, and I countered by pointing out she had plenty of flats if her heels hurt so much. Yet, as always, Lucy insisted she wore them because she felt they were almost a requirement whenever she went out. By the time we finished our lunch, the entire topic evolved into a more expansive conversation about walking in each other's shoes, literally and figuratively. We started comparing our routines. Though Lucy and I aren't very old, we have a somewhat stereotypical relationship pattern. We run our own small business, acting as agents for foreign manufacturers, and while I tend to work a lot of hours visiting clients, making sure orders come in, and maintaining client satisfaction, Lucy manages the accounting and bookkeeping. She also does most of the housework and cooking, since she officially only works part-time. We rent an office specifically so work doesn't take over our home. Most of the time, the arrangement works smoothly. Yet over the course of that conversation, Lucy insisted she was juggling a fair bit herself, household chores, cooking, all the bookkeeping, and that it would be nice for once if we swapped. Maybe she could take on my role for a few days while I did her tasks. I argued that meeting clients and securing deals wasn't as easy as it looked, and she claimed household duties and business paperwork took far more energy than I realized. Eventually, we reached a playful agreement. For 1 week, we would trade places entirely. She would dress more casually and take over my client meetings and outside visits while I handled the domestic chores, cooking, and bookkeeping. When Monday morning arrived, I was startled that Lucy was still in bed. She's usually the first one up and in the shower before the alarm rings. Then it hit me. I was supposed to be making breakfast. That was Lucy's standard routine, and now it was mine. So I grabbed a dressing gown and tiptoed down to the kitchen, putting on some coffee and making scrambled eggs. Lucy strolled in wearing a black shirt, black chinos, and comfortable black lace-up shoes. "This is kind of nice," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "So much easier than my usual routine. I just throw on these clothes and go." I couldn't resist a comment. "You don't have to dress exactly like me to do my job, you know." She shrugged, smiling. "If I went full on in my usual heels and a skirt, I'm worried some clients might see me as an easy mark. This feels more businesslike." After breakfast, she stuffed her laptop into a bag, gave me another quick peck on the lips, and headed out. I stared at the job list she had left for me. Vacuum, change bed sheets, put a load of laundry on, clean the kitchen, then prepare dinner. Ordinarily, Lucy wouldn't show up at the office until afternoon, so I figured I had all morning. Funnily enough, the tasks took me longer than expected, and before I knew it, lunchtime had come and gone. I hurriedly gulped down a sandwich and rushed to the office to finish some basic bookkeeping. It felt strange leaving the house in such a flurry, but I was shocked at how quickly the day passed. When 5 o'clock rolled around, it was time to run home and start cooking. Lucy arrived around 7, texting me beforehand that she'd be late, so I kept the food warm. She walked through the door, full of excitement. "You won't believe this," she announced, taking off her jacket. "I got my first order on my own. Better yet, it's a brand new client, the same one you've been chasing for months." Hearing that made me proud and deflated at the same time. Still, I smiled, congratulated her, and ushered her into the kitchen. She tasted my fresh spaghetti dinner. "This is really good," she said. "I haven't had this since our university days." We spent the rest of the evening in a pleasant haze of conversation. I was shocked at how cooking had worn me out, but I felt oddly satisfied too. That night, as I finished up in the bathroom and got ready to climb into bed, Lucy surprised me. She was lying there in my old t-shirt and shorts, clothes I typically would wear to bed. On the bed beside her was one of her satiny nighties. She gave me a mischievous smile. "You know, whenever you land a big sale, you come home feeling energized," she said quietly. "How about you slip that on, and we can see if that little thrill works both ways?" I hesitated, picking up the nightie. It looked lacy and sleek, something I knew Lucy adored wearing. Part of me felt shy, but part of me was curious. Was I about to do this? Why not? We had decided to walk in each other's shoes after all. Sliding that garment over my head was the first moment I realized how soft satin felt. It was utterly different from any pajamas I'd worn. Lucy pulled me onto the bed, clearly still pumped from her day's accomplishments. We spent some time cuddled up, whispering back and forth about her good fortune, my attempts at cooking, and how strange the day had been. Eventually we both dozed off, her arm across me, still holding me close in that nightie. Tuesday morning, I awoke to the feel of satiny fabric against my skin, a stark reminder of how drastically my routine had changed. The sensation was oddly comforting, and I wondered if Lucy always felt that pleasantness when she wore one of these. I got up to prepare breakfast again, this time throwing on Lucy's matching dressing gown too. She came downstairs in a casual black shirt and trousers, smiling at the sight of me. "You keep this up," she teased, pressing against my back in a playful half-hug, "and I'll get too used to rolling out of bed without lifting a finger." "You have a busy day," I said, echoing what she usually told me when I used to linger too long in the mornings. She laughed, munched her breakfast, and left, reminding me not to forget my Tuesday list: dusting, hand-washing delicate clothes, and prepping the evening meal. It was new territory for me. Doing the laundry meant I had to wash items like silk blouses, stockings, and lacy underthings by hand. And I found myself feeling oddly protective of them, almost worried I might ruin something delicate. After all that, I zipped to the office in the afternoon to tackle the business side. By the time I got home and cooked dinner, I felt busier than I had in ages. Lucy came home a little earlier that night. We ate, chatted about her day, and she noticed I had borrowed one of her t-shirts to lounge in after my shower. "I'm guessing you're getting more comfortable with my clothes," she noted, tossing her jacket over a chair. I shrugged, feeling heat rise in my cheeks, and she winked. Then, when bedtime came, the same nightie awaited me. I began to realize it might be standard this week. Whether we had a private moment of closeness or not, it was waiting on the bed like a subtle invitation. I slipped it on again, still enamored with the cool, silky texture, and we ended up drifting off in each other's arms. By Wednesday, our swapped roles were so natural that I instinctively woke up to prepare the coffee and breakfast. Lucy soon joined me in the kitchen. She tugged at my borrowed dressing gown with a twinkle in her eye, but said nothing. After finishing our meal, she reminded me that the day's chores included scrubbing the bathroom, tackling more laundry, and tidying our bedroom. At the bottom of the note, she added a playful suggestion about wearing her clothes more often. I wasn't entirely sure how far she intended to push this idea. Still, I rummaged through her wardrobe, spotting a dark blouse and well-cut trousers that fit me decently. Then I spent the rest of the day juggling house chores before rushing to the office. When Lucy got home, she had that triumphant glow again. Apparently, she'd scored another deal. I noticed she gave my outfit a once-over, then she ran her hand along the sleeve of the borrowed blouse and told me I looked nice. It was a small compliment, but it felt surprisingly good. That night I found the same silky nightgown laid out for me. Though I still felt a flicker of awkwardness, it was now overshadowed by an unexpected sense of comfort. I began to think of the nightie not as something forbidden, but as a normal garment that happened to be Lucy's. Thursday, Lucy headed off to see clients in a more distant part of the region, leaving me with an even more extensive set of tasks. After finishing my chores, I wandered back into the bedroom, recalling the note she'd left. Part of me was intrigued by the idea of exploring more items from her closet. She had a blouse with a soft, almost satiny collar, something quite different from anything I'd wear. My curiosity was piqued by how it might feel, so I put it on. As I left the house, the thin fabric and slightly fitted shape made me realize that wearing such clothes caused me to hold myself differently. Maybe I was standing straighter, or being more careful about how I moved. Lucy didn't roll in until much later. I'd worked hard on dinner, only for it to dry out by the time she arrived. I couldn't help feeling annoyed because I'd put so much effort into that dish. Lucy apologized profusely, explaining that her day had been hectic but successful again. My irritation softened a bit. She helped me clean the kitchen, thanked me for the blouse I'd borrowed, and told me I looked good in it. Despite my frustration, I couldn't deny that I found her excitement infectious. Friday arrived, and Lucy proposed we split the morning chores and then head to the office together. She saw me in the silky nightie and gave me a playful grin. "We can straighten up quickly, then pick out something for you to wear to the office," she said. "Think you're up for trying something a little more adventurous in the clothing department?" I hesitated. What does adventurous mean in this context? She only winked and led me to the closet, holding up a blouse with a big bow at the collar, the kind of top she'd normally wear for a dressy daytime look. "Try this," she said. I slipped it on, and she helped tie the bow. "I don't know if I can actually walk around outside with a giant bow like this," I said. She patted my shoulder. "You'll be wearing a jacket. Nobody will notice unless you take it off. Just see how it feels." The blouse was undeniably soft, and while it did feel a bit conspicuous, I had to admit it was comfortable. I tucked it into a pair of her slacks that fit me pretty well, and together we headed to the office. As we walked, Lucy teased me about my bow peeking out from under the lapel of my jacket. I rolled my eyes, but a small part of me was enjoying the whole charade. Maybe it was because I was so focused on all these little clothing details that I was more attuned to the practical challenges Lucy faced daily. I was certainly more aware of how I leaned, how I placed my arms, and how my clothes might shift around me. Saturday arrived, and it was one of those days where neither of us had an urgent reason to rush into work, though I was behind on Lucy's office tasks. Over breakfast, Lucy revisited the idea that I should actually try wearing more obviously feminine clothing, a skirt or a dress, to truly get the physical sensation of walking in her shoes. My initial response was a definite no. I'd felt anxious enough wearing blouses or flats, but Lucy made a convincing argument. Saturday would be quieter in the office, fewer people around. She even offered to drive me there so nobody would really see me. Even if they did, we'd probably only run into strangers. Eventually, my curiosity nudged me into agreement. That's how I ended up in a dark dress Lucy picked out. It was knee-length and had subtle shaping around the waist, something she considered casual enough for a day at the office. But that wasn't all. She handed me a pair of tights, explaining that a complete outfit deserved the proper foundation. She also insisted on giving me a brief lesson in applying a light layer of makeup, styling my hair with a blow dryer, and helping me into a pair of her slip-on flats that, fortunately, had enough stretch to fit my feet. "I can't believe I'm actually doing this," I said, staring at the reflection in the mirror. My hair had been shaped to look reasonably neat. The subtle makeup evened out my face just enough to give me a more feminine look. Lucy seemed delighted by the transformation. "You'll be fine," she reassured me, guiding me out to the car. My heart hammered when we stepped outside. I was hyper-aware of the breeze on my legs. "Just relax, and remember, you're not likely to run into anyone you know on a Saturday." Lucy dropped me off at the office and left to run errands. I spent several hours catching up on the backlog of bookkeeping. Eventually, working in the dress and tights became less distracting. It was as though my mind adjusted to how the skirt fabric moved around my legs and how my body felt in those snug tights. I wondered if Lucy actually felt this constantly throughout her day, or if she'd grown so used to it that she barely noticed. Lucy returned mid-afternoon, a shopping bag in hand. She watched me pace back and forth in the office, probably noticing my awkward attempts not to trip over my own feet in her ballet flats. "Got you a little something," she said, handing me the bag. Inside were a pair of black heels, modest in style but definitely higher than the flats I'd been wearing. "In your size," she added casually. "Now you can truly walk in shoes like mine." I tried them on, carefully standing and walking a few steps. The heels changed my posture drastically, forcing me to be mindful of each step. Lucy's voice was encouraging, telling me I looked surprisingly graceful for a first-timer. A minute later, we headed home together, Lucy driving with a smile. She proposed we go out that evening, but I balked. My nerves were already on edge after wearing a dress in a near-empty office. The idea of stepping into a more public place dressed that way was overwhelming. Lucy kindly dropped the subject, so instead we stayed in, enjoying a quiet meal. I noticed that she watched me move around the kitchen, a curious expression on her face. I suspected she was gauging how comfortable I seemed in the dress. Sunday morning came, and we lay in bed longer than usual, lazily chatting about whether we should make time for church. By the time we looked at the clock, we'd have been late anyway. Typically, we might go for a relaxing walk or do a bit of shopping. Lucy mentioned that she wanted to pick up some new clothes to accommodate how she was dressing for her new business role. She also teased that we could both go, me still dressed in her style, so I could experience what it felt like to be out in public, in full daylight, among crowds, as a woman. I hesitated, but she made a point. Why not push the experiment? It was only for a week, and I'd already worn a dress a few times indoors. So I found myself stepping into another of Lucy's dresses after a proper shower. This one was a bit more casual, perfect for a day of shopping. I paired it with some low-heeled shoes. Lucy, ever supportive, wore jeans and a shirt I'd normally wear, so it was clear who was playing which role. Then we hopped in the car for a drive to a large shopping center where we were unlikely to run into neighbors or family friends. To my surprise, I managed to relax a bit after the first half hour. The bustling environment meant nobody paid us much attention. Lucy kept gently reminding me to watch my posture and to avoid tugging nervously at my hemline. We stopped for coffee, walked in and out of various stores, and browsed the racks of clothing. Lucy tried on a handful of outfits, leaving me standing outside the fitting rooms. Occasionally, someone gave me a quick glance, but I realized they probably saw just another woman waiting for a friend. That realization helped me breathe more easily. By mid-afternoon, we were hungry. Lucy suggested a casual cafe. She teased me about how slowly I was drinking my tea, probably trying to avoid talking too much and risking that someone would find my voice suspicious. but nobody batted an eye. Eventually we headed home, satisfied with the day's outing. That evening, Lucy proposed a new arrangement. How about, for the rest of the week, you live as a woman in every way that's practical? You're already doing my work. Why not immerse yourself fully for these remaining days? I considered it, weighing the anxiety it brought against the curiosity I felt. I guess I could, I finally said. But what if a client shows up unexpectedly at the office? She shrugged. It's a low chance. I handle all appointments in person. Any pop-in visitors are usually just dropping off or picking up packages. I'll be there to help if it comes to that. So Monday morning arrived, and my routine now included not only making breakfast, but also methodically dressing in some of Lucy's more obviously feminine clothes. I even tried to do my hair in a basic style she'd taught me. A dab of light foundation, some mascara, a bit of neutral lipstick, and off I went. Lucy couldn't hold back her smile. She brushed some lint from my shoulder and teased, "You'll pass for a pro in no time." Tuesday brought an unexpected curveball. Lucy mentioned that she had a hairdresser appointment, one she'd booked weeks ago. She suggested I go in her place instead of canceling. "That's just a simple cut," I said nervously. "I can just skip it, right?" "Don't be silly. I'm too swamped with your outside visits. Besides, it's already paid for. I'll call my hairdresser Alice and explain everything. She'll be thrilled to meet you." My attempt to protest was silenced by Lucy gently putting a finger to my lips, and that's how I found myself nervously entering a bright, modern salon at 9:30 in the morning. A small bell rang above the door as Alice, a vibrant woman with short, pink-tinted hair, welcomed me with a wide grin. "You must be Lucy's partner. She told me all about the swap," Alice said, guiding me to a comfy seat. "Don't worry, we'll keep it simple if that's what you want, but I'm here if you decide to do something more adventurous." In the end, the excitement in her voice pushed me to say yes to some styling. She washed my hair in one of those reclining sinks, my first time experiencing that, and walked me through a possible style that might look good with my facial structure. She even offered some temporary extensions to give me longer hair for the week, explaining how they could be clipped and secured. "Lucy said you're walking in her shoes," Alice said with a wink. "You might as well go all the way and see what it feels like to have hair down your back too." Despite my initial unease, I agreed. The process took longer than expected. Washing, dyeing the extensions to blend, trimming them, then carefully placing them. But Alice was cheerful and thorough. At one point, she suggested tidying my brows and giving me a minor lash enhancement. She assured me it was all temporary. I found myself accepting, somewhat fascinated by how each addition chipped away at the more familiar vision of myself in the mirror. By the time I left, I had layered hair that fell softly past my shoulders and a subtle new shape to my brows. My eyes looked bigger thanks to the lash work. Glancing in the mirror, I almost forgot I was me. It was startling but also intriguing. I thanked Alice, tipping her extra for her time. She grinned and told me to come back any time. Driving to the office with my new hair felt surreal. I couldn't help flipping it over my shoulder a few times, feeling the foreign weight of it. Lucy got home that evening and practically squealed when she saw me. "You look amazing," she managed, taking my hands and running her fingers over my freshly manicured nails. I spent much of Wednesday and Thursday doing house chores in a dress, going to the office, and letting Lucy handle my usual field visits. More than once, I found myself adjusting to the subtleties. How to step carefully in heels, how to remember not to smudge my makeup, how to brush my new hair at night so it wouldn't tangle. I'd never realized how much time this all took. One evening, Lucy gave me a pair of particularly elegant heels. "Try these," she said, eyes twinkling. "They're similar to what I wear when we go out somewhere fancy." A quick glance told me they had a tall, slim heel. I slipped them on, standing uncertainly before taking my first tentative steps. Lucy chuckled, supportive but teasing, as I tried walking a short distance. My posture had to change immediately, and the muscles in my calves felt a subtle strain. It gave me a new respect for her ability to move so gracefully in shoes like these. When Friday arrived, my final official day in Lucy's role, I decided to pick an outfit that felt distinctly feminine, a pleated skirt that swished with each step, paired with a soft blouse that tied at the neckline. I wanted to wrap up this experiment with a bit of flair. Lucy watched me gather my things, nodding in approval. She wore casual clothes closer to my usual style. "Let's finish our tasks early and maybe get fish and chips tonight," she proposed. "You've worked hard all week." I agreed, half wondering how it would feel to slip back into my own clothes the next day. But Lucy had a final surprise in store. Saturday morning after chores, she announced that we should go to a particular bar in town that evening, a place called Velvet. It was somewhere we'd visited in the past, mostly known for its lively atmosphere and people dressed to catch attention. She seemed keen on the idea of seeing how I'd handle a more public venue in a dazzling outfit. Feeling both curious and nervous, I agreed. Lucy found a striking dress in her wardrobe. She said I'd once encouraged her to buy it for a party. It featured layers of semi-sheer chiffon over a silky slip, with delicate buttons down the back and a hem that ended somewhat higher on the thigh than I was used to. Wearing it made me feel a rush of self-consciousness and exhilaration. She completed the look with a high-heeled pair of shoes, the same ones I'd tried around the house earlier in the week. She dressed in more neutral clothing, but kept a bit of her own flair in her hair and makeup, so we appeared as a pair of well-dressed women stepping out for the night, although her outfit was definitely less showy than mine. Heading into the bar's parking lot, I was hyper-aware of the breeze against my legs and the softness of the fabric around me. Several people lingered around the entrance. I could sense more than one set of eyes drifting over me, probably just checking out my flashy dress. Lucy took my arm in a protective gesture. "You'll be fine," she whispered. Inside, the music was lively and the lights were low. It was crowded, with people dancing, chatting, and leaning over tables with colorful drinks. Lucy got us a couple of drinks and guided me onto the small dance floor. At first, I felt exposed, but Lucy laughed, spun us around, and reminded me that in a place like this, most people were far too preoccupied to scrutinize me closely. Once I let myself be swept along by the beat, I caught myself smiling. We did have a minor moment when a couple of men approached us, clearly interested in making conversation. Lucy politely but firmly told them we wanted some alone time. One of them reached out, lightly touching my shoulder, and Lucy swiftly shot him a warning glance. A nearby staff member intervened, steering them away. I found my heart pounding, though. It was an unsettling reminder that in an environment like this, lines could blur fast. Lucy, however, stayed composed, giving my hand a quick squeeze to let me know she had my back. Even with a bit of adrenaline still in me, I realized Lucy was right when she'd said that sometimes women had to deal with unwelcome attention. Later we slipped out, took a breather in the fresh air, and Lucy asked if I was okay. I nodded, though my pulse was still galloping. "I've had enough excitement for one night," I admitted with a crooked smile. She gave me a comforting hug. "You handled it well, though. Now you know some of what we face at times." We drove home, quiet for a few minutes, and I found myself thinking about how differently I'd see nights out from now on, simply because I'd been on the receiving end of those glances, that attention. Lucy must have sensed my introspection. She reached over, squeezed my hand, and didn't say anything, letting me mull it over. Once home, we kicked off our shoes, peeled off jackets, and I felt a strange mingling of relief and satisfaction. I was beginning to understand the balance of excitement and caution Lucy must feel on a night out. That was effectively the end of our 2-week experiment. The next day, Lucy came into the bedroom holding 2 coffee mugs and sat beside me on the bed. We still had tasks to do, but there was an unspoken awareness that we'd be transitioning back to our old roles soon. "You know," she said, "this swap made me see a lot more of what you deal with in business." "And I've seen more of what you handle at home," I responded thoughtfully. "Both the chores and the little things that usually go unnoticed." She nodded, placing a hand on my knee. "I've gained confidence negotiating with clients, and you did a great job with all the domestic tasks and bookkeeping." I set my mug aside, leaning back against the headboard. "It's been eye-opening. I mean, it feels like we both got a look at the weight the other person carries." She tilted her head, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "You also realized what it's like wearing heels, and I noticed you got used to wearing them quicker than expected. Are you going to slip back into your old routine with all your usual clothes right away?" I shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. I have a new respect for what it means to get dressed up. Still, I'm kind of looking forward to not worrying if my blouse bow will dip into my dinner." Lucy laughed. "I'm sure you'll manage, but let's think about our long-term arrangement. This experiment actually boosted our sales. You've become pretty good at the bookkeeping again, and I like talking to clients. Maybe we don't have to abandon every aspect of it just because our swap week is over." So we discussed a new plan. Lucy would continue going out to meet certain clients, especially the ones she'd been successful with. I would handle more of the behind-the-scenes paperwork, but we'd split cooking duties, planning, and chores more evenly. Neither of us wanted to slip back into the old rut of me working all hours, while Lucy balanced too many household tasks. We'd try a blended approach, each doing parts of the other's routine. As for the clothes, Lucy joked that she was definitely stealing a few of my hoodies, and she had zero problem with me occasionally borrowing her comfy sweaters. At some point, we found ourselves laughing about how wearing each other's items had changed our perspectives. "I never knew you liked some of my dresses that much," she teased. "I never knew how great satin feels until I borrowed that nightie," I admitted, trying not to blush. We decided that while I wouldn't be strutting around the office in a bow blouse every day, I might not swear off some of Lucy's more comfortable clothing at home if the moment felt right. And Lucy figured she'd mix in some more practical footwear for her new routine of meeting clients, though she'd still keep her beloved heels around for certain occasions. When Monday came, there was a quiet sense that our official experiment had ended. We each had a handful of tasks to accomplish in our own corners of the business. That morning, however, I still made breakfast. Lucy noticed and gave me a meaningful grin, like we'd both come away with a deeper appreciation of each other's daily work. And even though I was now dressed in my usual shirt and trousers, a part of me couldn't help but remember the swirl of a skirt against my legs or the sound of heels clicking on the sidewalk. The rest of the week progressed with small but noticeable changes. Lucy sometimes came home and proudly told me about a client she'd spoken to, while I'd mention a new system I'd set up for the bookkeeping. We handled the household tasks together more often, turning some chores into shared activities instead of letting them fall entirely on one person. On a few evenings, I even felt a slight pang of nostalgia for that silky nightie, as strange as it sounds. Lucy noticed, and once or twice, she quietly laid it out on the bed. Perhaps I didn't hesitate as much anymore. We found small ways to keep some vestiges of the experience alive, without feeling the need to keep up every aspect of our swap. In the end, that simple notion we heard in church, about walking in someone else's shoes, turned out to be far more transformative than either of us expected. What began as a literal challenge to test each other's routines became a broadened understanding of how we each lived. From chores and business calls to selecting clothes and dealing with the scrutiny of being in public, we had confronted differences in how the world treats us, learned about each other's strengths, and uncovered nuances in our daily lives. And that, in its own way, felt like a big step forward. Recognizing that by briefly stepping into Lucy's world, I'd gained insights I might never have found on my own. Lucy, likewise, respected my work and saw challenges in areas she'd once dismissed as easy. Though our friends and parents might never know the details of our experiment, we carried the lessons forward in our shared life. The new sense of closeness and mutual understanding was something we both valued. That night, as we turned out the lights and settled into bed, Lucy rested her hand lightly on my side. We'd seen each other in ways we never had before. It was both strange and wonderful, giving us a renewed perspective. Neither of us spoke in that moment, but we both sensed it. The gentle darkness offered a quiet grace, and our breath slowed in unison, as though the bustle of the last 2 weeks finally receded into the calm. There might be no perfect solution to balancing life's responsibilities, but we had a feeling that together we'd handle whatever came next.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.